Ever since I started doing challenge runs of various games, Final Fantasy X has been on my list, but with the game being over 20 years old now and still having a rather active community, the majority of things that came to my mind have been done already. Then one day it suddenly hit me. Can you beat Final Fantasy X if you're only allowed to use special abilities and pretty much nothing else? Well, today we're going to find out. Before we start though, let's quickly go through the rules of this challenge. First of all, only special abilities are allowed to be used, obviously. This means no attack, magic, skills, items, or overdrives. If a character does not possess a special ability, they have to defend. This rule comes into play once Rikku joins our party for the first time, since we don't have any way to use any special abilities before that. Characters are only allowed to learn special abilities from their own sphere grid, so for example, we can't just go onto Rikku's grid with everybody and have them learn steal and use. The exception to this is Tidus, who is allowed to make a detour to Kimahri's grid in order to learn Lancet, and only Lancet, since there is literally no other way we can deal damage once we get to Besaid. Celestial weapons are banned as well. Even though it is highly unlikely we will ever get to the point where we break the damage limit, I still want to prevent getting overpowered eventually. Counter weapons are not allowed either. This includes a classic counter, evade and counter, and also magic counter. The same goes for auto armor, so auto potion, auto phoenix, but also positive status effects like auto protect and auto shell are banned as well. I doubt they would make a big difference anyways, but might as well. We also use the expert sphere grid since it's much easier to cross paths into other characters' grids. This is not really a rule, but just some additional information I wanted to give you on the way. And yeah, I think that's actually all there is to it already. As always, I'm writing the script as I go through the run, so at this point I have no idea what is going to await me. Anyways, enough of the intro, let's get going with the run. We go through the opening cutscenes, get to name our main character, and continue on. Considering there are no special abilities available at this point, we just go through the opening cutscene in Samarkand like in a casual playthrough. Sin takes us to Spira and we go through the scripted fight against Chiano, I have no idea if I pronounced that correctly, before battling Click shortly afterwards. Once Rikku and the Bhed show up is where our rule starts to kick in. Rikku has access to steal and use, so we can steal grenades off the enemy and then use them against it until it's down and out. And here is where the first tedious part of the game already starts. Rikku is only here for the next segment and gone again afterwards, so we need to grind Tidus here until he reaches Lancet on Kimahri's board. Like mentioned in the rules, this is the only time a character is allowed to learn an ability that is not from their own grid. The grind itself is relatively easy. Steal a grenade with Rikku and then throw it to overkill the enemies. While this does take a little while, it is not as bad as I first thought it was gonna be, and after a bit of grinding, we already get access to Lancet. At this point, I was hoping we could continue on with the main story, but trying out Lancet in the first battle quickly made me realize that we might be stuck here for quite some time still. The first Lancet from Tidus does a whopping 14 damage thanks to his low initial magic stats, so yeah, we need to get that up first before being able to continue. The best way to go at this is to move over to one of the mage's sphere grids. Both Lulu's and Yuna's grids are accessible rather easily from here, so it's a matter of who is going to give me the better benefits. Lulu does have a lot of evasion nodes, which would make dodging easier, but in the end I decided to go for Yuna's grid since she seems to have more magic nodes overall, at least at the part where Tidus is at the moment. Now, I am obviously not going to show the entire grind, but to give you a basic idea how long it took until we got done. We had to activate a total of 3 additional magic nodes, giving Tidus an extra 8 magic. And for the last few levels, Tidus already needs over 300 AP, with the encounter only giving 2 or 4 AP, depending on the formation. And all that grinding for Tidus Lancet attack to do a measly 45 to 50-ish damage. I thought about grinding here even longer, but at this point I just wanted to continue on with the game, and I was pretty sure that the damage would be enough to at least get us past Kimahri, at which point another grind should be less repetitive hopefully. This grind in total took about 4 hours, and keep in mind that we did it at ×4 speed. So basically, on a PS2, this would have taken around 15 to 16 hours already. Anyways, we continue on, and the rest of the segment is pretty much a cakewalk. We maxed out on grenades in the meantime, so the triple fish encounter as well as the boss fight is just throwing grenades until the enemy is down. The ship gets attacked by Sin, we lose Rikku, and end up in Bhed with Walker, who attempts to murder Titus by throwing him off a cliff. The encounters in the water are annoying but manageable. Thanks to the drain effect of Lancet, Titus' HP are always rather high. Walker at this point is literally useless since he has no access to any special abilities yet, so all he can do is defend. Once we reach Bhed, we get introduced to the rest of the party, and Yuna gains access for her first Aeon Valifor, which we will literally never use except the tutorial that's coming up. The next battle coming up is against Kimahri, and while we don't really do a whole lot of damage with Lancet, thanks to the drain effect, we're never in danger of being wiped. Kimahri can do quite some damage with Jump, but it's quickly healed back thanks to Lancet. While this battle feels like it takes an eternity, we eventually win and continue on. We already briefly talked about the tutorials before, and there are quite a couple of those on the way to the ship where you can't do anything but use the attacks the game wants you to. Once we get through those though, it's back to special only. Even though we get access to the second Lancet user Kimahri once we are on the ship, I was pretty sure the 50-ish damage we're doing now would not be enough to survive the part 2 of the boss fight, but before grinding for an endless amount of hours again, I wanted to give it a shot at least. The first part of the boss fight is not a big issue. Kimahri by default already does 80-ish damage with Lancet, which is way more than the 50 that Titus is putting out. The Sin skills on the ship don't really do a whole lot of damage, and with Lancet we can easily heal the damage back again, so we focus on the Sin itself. After Lanceting Sin for quite a bit, we get it down, Titus goes overboard, Walker goes after him, and we enter part 2 of the boss fight, and this is the one that I was way more afraid of. In this battle we only have access to Titus and Walker, and since Walker doesn't have any special abilities, all he can do is guard. We also have a total of 5 enemies that are going to attack us for quite some damage. Luckily Lancet has a short casting time, so Titus can heal up decently well even after taking damage, but with no means to blind the boss, and our total damage being relatively low, I don't really see this ending well. Eventually Walker is going down, and at this point it's pretty much game over. Titus himself has no way to keep his HP up when he is attacked by 5 enemies, Lancet still does way too little damage, and after a few more turns, he is down as well, and we get our first game over in this run. The boss has a total of 2000 HP, and after rewatching the fight, it seems we did about 1300 damage to the boss, so we are still quite a bit off. Now, the easiest way to get through this one would be to have Titus level up and give him some more magic, but the next magic node is 8 fields away, and due to our long grind early on already, it takes a ton of time for him to get that amount of AP. Another thing is that we only get access to Kimahri after the upcoming boss fight, so I wanted to avoid grinding too much if possible, so he wouldn't fall behind the rest of the party right at the start of the game already. Because of this, I had another plan. If we can't make Titus any stronger, our easiest way out is to make Walker more bulky. As long as Walker is alive, we're doing decently well, so if we can keep him alive longer, we might have a chance to win this one without having to grind another 10 hours or so. Considering the other party members have not been leveled up much either, they level up way faster, so the overall grinding isn't even that bad for the most part. During this grind, we also get access to the first special abilities of other party members, mainly Lulu's Focus. We also get the 200 extra HP for Walker, which takes him to 818 HP, and go back onto the ship to give this boss another shot. Thanks to Lulu's Focus raising magic and magic defense, our damage output with Lancet is going up quite a bit, so the fight against Sin doesn't take that much time anymore. I was hoping that the magic up would carry over into the second fight, but I was pretty sure that all stat ups would be reset, and unfortunately, that turned out to be true. The 200 extra HP on Waka made him survive quite a bit longer than in the last attempt, but again, he goes down eventually, and from that point on forward, Titus can't keep up with healing himself through Lancet any longer. We did get much closer than on our last attempt though, so I thought with some more luck, we might be able to do this. I tried this battle 2 more times, but the result was always the same. While we did get closer than before, it was not quite enough yet, so again we go back to grind some more levels. 4 levels later, Waka gets another 200 HP, at which point he's now sitting at 1018 HP. Hopefully enough this time. Once again we go through the Sin battle just like before, and then enter part 2, where we hopefully can score a victory now. I don't really think I need to explain much of this battle at this point. Use Lancet, and hopefully survive long enough to defeat the enemy before we game over. Again, Waka goes down eventually, but we're pretty far into the battle at this point, and after getting some good luck with Drain Touch dodges, we are able to take down the boss with Titus having almost 400 HP at the end. Sin destroys Killiga, leaving only a Blitzball alive, people die and Yuna dances, and if she ever stops dancing, we can continue on to Killiga Temple. There is an optional battle against Lord Ocho in the woods here, and at first I thought about giving it a shot, but then I remembered that it loves to apply poison with its regular attack, and we're doing nowhere near enough damage to out-heal a potential poison. While Lord Ocho does have a 1 in 8 chance to drop an HP sphere, which would be pretty useful, it's definitely not worth the hassle to grind even longer, so we continue on towards the temple where we run into the next Sinspawn Sheneo, I think. Jesus, what even are those names, I swear. Anyways, this battle went pretty smooth for the most part. Again we use Lulu to increase the damage output from Titus and Kimahri, who are going after the tentacles first. Once those are gone, we focus on the boss itself and keep on lanceting until it opens up its shell. At this point, it will start using Venom against the party member with the highest HP, which also applies poison, and if you remember what I just talked about, this is pretty bad news. In Final Fantasy X, poison inflicts roughly 25% of the character's max HP every turn, so we need to end the battle quickly. Eventually, Titus isn't able to keep up with the healing anymore and goes down, so now it's up to Kimahri to get us through this one. Luckily, Venom always targets the character with the most HP, and due to focus, Kimahri barely takes any damage from water. Though it did get incredibly close towards the end, Kimahri managed to pull out the victory with 1 more Lancet, and we're able to beat the boss on our very first attempt. Before continuing on to Luca though, I got curious and tried to give Lord Ocho a shot, but like expected, the poison makes this battle pretty much unwinnable at this point. Technically you could grind poison ward armors from the bees in the forest, but with all the grinding we have done already, I really wasn't ready to invest that much time for an optional boss. With that, we head over to Luca where the old bat kidnapped Yuna, so it's our job to save her now. Luckily our party setup for this is pretty much our main party consisting of Titus, Kimahri and Lulu, so just like always, we increase our magic with focus and take the Machina out with Lancet. Once we made our way to the dock, we have to battle the Obliterator now. Since we're stuck with special moves only, we're not allowed to use the crane mechanic in the fight either, so we have to take it down manually using Lancet once again. Strategy remains the same. Use focus to buff our magic, and then go to work using Lancet. The incoming damage is luckily not a big issue since it can be easily healed up. Obliterator will occasionally count magic attacks with Mute Ball, but luckily Mute does not affect Lancet, so we can continue doing damage even through the Mute status. Lulu goes down at some point since she's the only one that can't heal herself up, but focus is maxed out at this point anyways, so she doesn't really have a lot of use left. And yeah, that is pretty much all there is to that fight. Due to Obliterator's high HP and us not dealing a whole lot of damage, the battle does take quite a while, but it never really got any dangerous, and eventually we're able to take it out and win on the first try yet again. Up next is the Blitzball final. Since the reward for winning here is a strength sphere, which is pretty much useless in our setup anyways, it is not required that we win, but it'd be a nice bonus on the way. The classic Oryx team is actually not as bad as a lot of people make them out to be. Sure, Keeper sucks, but Chasu and Boda are rather good defenders, and Dato has a good amount of endurance to make it all the way to the goal. In the end, it got rather close, but we were able to clutch out a victory, winning 3-2. Once the final is over, it's back into battle against a couple of Sahagians first. Just like in the previous underwater fights, Waka is pretty much useless here, so he keeps guarding while Titus is trying to take the enemies out using Lancet. Since their damage isn't too high, we can pretty much keep Titus at full HP throughout the fight, and that is very important for the next one coming up right after against Garuda. And this battle legitimately caught me off guard. Not because Titus is the only one that can deal damage, but because I completely forgot that Garuda has a 30% chance to counterattack, and those counters deal huge damage, making it really hard to keep Titus' HP up since we're not allowed to blind the enemy or use Power Break with Oren to reduce the incoming damage. Not only that, but once it drops below 40% of its HP, it will always counterattack, and as you can see, this is becoming a huge issue very quickly. The counters do more damage than we're able to heal back, so we have to rely on some lucky dodges. Unfortunately, at some point the counters started to pile up too much and we game over yet again. And without spoiling too much, this happened over and over and over again. Luckily there is an autosave right before this part, so we don't have to do the Blitzball game and the Sahagin battle all over again, but still, this is quite the hassle. The majority of those battles usually went fine until we got Garuda down to 40% of its health, but at this point the guaranteed counter is usually too much and we get wiped every single time. We're not going through every single attempt here since that would take way too long. Just know that at this point we are already 2 hours into battling the enemy and still weren't able to squeeze out a victory. At this point, I kinda regretted going into Yuna's grid with Titus, since Lulu would have had a lot more evasion nodes, which probably would have made this battle much easier. In my best attempts where Garuda barely ever counted before getting to the HP threshold, it had about 200 HP left, so 3 more Lancets should be able to do it. This means we need to get 3 to 4 lucky dodges in order to win this fight if we get a lucky phase 1 with pretty much no counters at all. Now, my two options were to either just keep doing the fight and pray for some good RNG, or go back all the way to Killiga to grind for some more magic or HP. And considering we have already grinded a lot to even get to this point, I really didn't feel like going even further, so I just kept going, hoping to get the eventual God RNG run. And this run did happen after being pummeled by Garuda for over 4 hours. We only got countered once in phase 1 and managed to dodge that, so we skip over to the part where Oren goes down, at which point the enemy usually has about 400 HP left. We are already doing the battle at 4 times speed since there isn't a lot of strategy involved and we're just hoping for some good dodges. And just like I was calculating, we didn't dodge once, not twice, but 3 times in a row and are finally able to take out Garuda and continue on the run. Out of all battles up until this point, I was not expecting this one in particular to give me that many issues, but luckily grinding out the right amount of luck was enough to continue on. Oren joins the party and before we continue on with our pilgrimage on me and High Road. Random encounters in this area can be quite the problem as well. Floating ice can confuse characters and me and Fangs can put them to sleep, both of which is really annoying, and to add to this, there are also a lot of enemies on here with magic resistance, so Lancet is not doing a lot of damage either. Luckily it's not mandatory to win the upcoming boss battle, so we don't have to be afraid of another Garuda-like situation coming up so soon again. Speaking of which, we got the Chocobo Eater coming up, and I was pretty sure that we're doing nowhere near enough damage to be able to get through this fight, and yeah. This is pretty much what I expected, no big surprise here. It would have been nice if we could squeeze out a victory here, since it can drop a plus 10% magic weapon or elemental ward armors, but just like with Lord Ocho and Killiga before, the amount of grinding needed to get there probably doesn't justify the potential drops. Anyways, we continue on with our journey on Mushroom Rock Road, and just like on Meme High Road before, There are a lot of random encounters here that are rather nasty. We're getting to the point where a lot of enemies can wipe a character during an ambush before we can even get a turn in, which doesn't make things any easier. Another enemy we usually skip is Fongwa, since it has a chance to counter with pollen, which can inflict all kinds of status ailments, so yeah, we definitely don't want that either. The rematch with Garuda on the other hand here is rather easy now that we got access to Kimahri and Lulu as well. This one also gives some nice AP, so this is probably the ideal enemy to farm on if needed. With that, we have the fight against Sinspawn coming up, and I was curious to see how much damage the enemy's physical attack does. The head can be easily prevented from using Venom by using Lancet, but the damage from the body is going to be much higher without Power Break or killing off the arms. And as you can see, this attack does over 700 damage, and with all my damage dealers being relatively low on max HP, this is going to be a problem. Yuna being the only one that can heal the entire party doesn't make it any easier either, especially considering the heal from Prey is only about 200 HP. And yeah, once Kimahri gets wiped, this was pretty much over, but I was expecting that outcome. Technically, we could just grind here until we can tank the attack, but I had another idea I wanted to try first. Titus can use Shear to increase the party's attack and defense, which means we should be able to endure a hit after using it a few times. The only problem with it, although it can be accessed right at the start, I was in such a hurry to get down to Lancet that I never activated the nodes. So basically we can either grind until we can tank the hits, or go all the way back on the sphere grid. The latter option can also be done by using a return sphere, which at this point of the game is only accessible during Blitzball, so guess what I did? We played 2 full seasons of Blitzball to get access to the 2 return spheres needed. While this is just as grindy as fighting regular enemies, my approach to my challenges in general is to only grind as much as needed to continue, and considering I could have gotten Shear right at the beginning of the game, it's only fair to do it this way now. You can just reset the league until you get the price needed, and to be honest, the Oryx team isn't even that bad for the most part except Keeper, so it's not really a big issue to win the league either. I wanted to avoid Blitzball entirely at first, but it's pretty much the only option to get back to Cheer without having to grind random enemies for hours. Once we got our rewards, we go back to learn Cheer and head into attempt number 2 on Sinspawn. This time we also head in with a different strategy. Titus will use Cheer numerous times in order to increase everybody's defense to the point where they should be able to withstand a physical attack. Lulu's focus is here to increase damage output on Titus Lancet, as well as reduce the incoming damage from the head's Thunder, and Yuna will just spam Prey to keep the party's HP up. The head will only use Thunder and Venom, which can be easily interrupted by single Lancet. The body will switch between using Demi and physical attacks. This attack pattern gives us a good opportunity to recover with Prey and keep the party's HP high enough to tank a physical hit afterwards. And that is pretty much the entire strategy for this battle. It does take forever since Titus is the only one able to attack and his Lancet doesn't deal the most damage, capping out at about 180-ish. Once Lulu caps out with her focus, we switch her out for Kimahri to deal some additional damage. The battle takes quite long since the head has 4000 HP and the body has 10,000 HP, but with this strategy we're pretty safe, so it's just a matter of how long the battle actually takes. After 15 minutes, and parts of this battle being done on ×4 speed because I got impatient, we beat Gui and continue on to the second battle involving Seymour. This battle is one of the few exceptions where we can use regular attacks since nobody has a damaging special ability. Because of that, we just play it casually and destroy the boss with Seymour. Not really much to say about this. More people die, Yuna keeps dancing, and we continue on with the main story. Josei High Road isn't really anything special for the most part. One thing to watch out here is the basilisks, which can petrify a character, something we're not able to heal, but other than that, we just go on like before. We go to the Temple of Josei, grab another Aeon that we will never use, and get a plus 20% magic damage weapon for Kimahri from one of the Crusaders, which is quite nice in a setup like this. Up next, we head to the Moonflow, and the upcoming boss fight here is the last one before we get Rikku back into the party. The only problem? This is another underwater boss fight, and if you remember the one against the Sinspawn earlier, we might get stuck here for quite a while again. Unfortunately, I still don't have a water ward armor for Titus, but Walker can still use the one from the previous boss fight, so I hope this is enough to get us through without any big issues. The boss has a total of 4000 HP. Titus uses Lancet, while Walker only defends since he literally has no other useful thing to do in this battle. Once Extractor rises up, it will use depth charges, which damages the entire party until you deal enough damage to it. Unfortunately, the damage we do is not high enough, so most of the time we have to eat 2 depth charges before we can get the boss down again. Eventually Walker goes down, and we're only barely past the halfway point. Luckily, Titus oftentimes gets 2 attacks between enemy turns, which makes healing up quite more manageable. Depth charges still does a ton of damage, but with the help of Lancet we can heal up enough and actually beat Extractor on our very first attempt. Not going to lie, I was not expecting that, but who am I to complain? We finally get Rikku back in the party, and while the game doesn't get any easier from this point on forward, Rikku opens up a lot of possible options with steal and use. Once we reach Guado's alarm, we also get the tutorial for equipment customization, which is going to be quite useful too. Before continuing on with the story, we're starting to stack up some items thanks to finally being able to steal now. Good items on Jose High Road include elemental items from various flans and chests, sleep powder from the Garm, and poison fangs from the bite box. Once we got a good amount of everything, we head into the Thunder Plains where more stealing is done. Steals worth mentioning here are Luna Curtains from Larva, which give Shell, Light Curtains for Protect from the Iron Giants, various Thunder Elemental items, and Chocobo Feathers from the Cactuars. Other good steals also include items like Petrify Grenades and Silver Hourglasses. Unfortunately, both of those are rare steals, so it's quite tedious to get a decent enough stack of them. We continue on in the Macalania woods, where it's pretty much all of the same as in previous areas. Due to the upcoming boss, we're trying to get a good stock of all 4 elemental items. At the save sphere, we grab a first strike weapon for Titus, which is the only way to get one at this point if I'm not mistaken. You can also customize it onto a weapon by using a return sphere, but I'd rather not grind more Blitzball, so we just continue on to the next boss fight against Sphere Morph. Again, I had a very specific strategy for this battle in mind. We use Lancet once in order to find the elemental weakness, and then throw the elemental item needed to deal the highest amount of damage possible. And that is pretty much all there is to that battle. We rinse and repeat that process and are done with the enemy relatively quickly. No big issues here. Before continuing on, we actually return to the Thunder Plains again because we can do something that I forgot at first. While celestial weapons are banned in this run, the lightning dodging minigame offers another item that is actually quite useful, that being 3 HP spheres for successfully dodging 100 taps. While this is definitely quite annoying, the extra 900 HP are going to be very useful, considering the mage's sphere grids don't necessarily have a lot of HP nodes on them. With that, it is now time to head into the next boss fight against Crawler. Titus once again starts off cheering the party to increase their defense. Since both Lancet and throwing items still work, we can completely ignore the negator mechanic, which also makes this boss fight way easier in terms of incoming damage. As long as the negator is up, Crawler will only use Gatling gun, and with several cheers up, it barely does any damage. We could also throw light curtains for protect, but at this point it's not really necessary at all. Yuna's prey is enough to keep the party's HP capped out for the most part, while Rikku continues throwing lightning items at the boss. Towards the end, we also wipe the negator for some extra experience, and end the battle the following turn. While those 2 bosses were rather easy, I expect the next one to be a much bigger problem, but more on that in a few. In Macalania Temple, we performed a cutscene skip, which doesn't really do anything other than save us some time, but I wanted to see if I can still do it. Nothing more than a nice throwback to my speedrunning days. Anyways, We are up against Seymour for the very first time now. Phase 1 of the battle is relatively easy. Both Guado can be one-shot using a Petrify grenade, and after that it's buffing the party with haste and shell. Once everything is up, we throw grenades at Seymour until we got him down low enough to enter phase 2, where he summons Anima, and this is by far the most dangerous part of the battle. We need to get through its 18,000 HP quickly, since it will wipe a party member every other turn using Pain, which is a guaranteed KO. I was pretty sure it was not going to work, but I still wanted to try to guard with Oren to see if he can maybe take the hit for one of the other party members. As expected though, that is not the case, and we lose Kimari with the first Pain. We throw some more items, but at this point I'm pretty much ready to throw the battle, and when Rikku got wiped it was over as expected. I am pretty certain that we're not going to be able to get down Anima before the first Pain, but with a good enough strategy, we could do it before the second one hits. Another alternative would be grinding more Blitzballs and get ourselves 2 Dark Matters, but as mentioned earlier, I wanted to avoid Blitzball if possible for the most part. On attempt number 2, we make sure to have both Titus and Kimari in our party to deal the maximum amount of damage from turn 1, but again, luck wasn't on our side and Anima goes after Rikku first, effectively killing off this attempt as well. For attempt number 3, I wanted to make sure the same thing wouldn't happen again, so once Anima was ready to go for Pain, we switched Rikku out for Waka to guarantee her survival after the first attack. This time Anima went for Titus though, so we switch Rikku back in and continue throwing items. And would you look at that, we are able to wipe Anima with the very last attack before the second party member would have been done. Even though we only got a 2 party member setup at this point now, the last part of the battle should not be an issue any longer. We continue throwing items and using Lancer with Kimari, and Seymour goes down after only getting a single attack in. Honestly, I was expecting this battle to give me way more issues, but coming in prepared definitely helped out a lot here. Once we're out of the Macalania temple, we still have to go through Wendigo and 2 more Guados, but luckily, this battle is pretty much free. Just like in the battle against Seymour, we can wipe both Guados with a Petrify grenade. Since Rikku only gets 1 attack before the boss in though, we have Oren and Waka join her here since they can probably tank a hit from Wendigo, but of course in attempt number 1, the boss goes immediately after Rikku and wipes her. Attempt number 2 went a bit luckier as Waka took the hit, and at this point the battle is already won. We throw a sleeping powder onto the boss and then start doing damage with Lancet. Since those count as magic attacks, the boss doesn't wake up after them, so we can slowly whittle it down while reapplying sleep with another sleeping powder when he wakes up after a couple of turns, and that's all for the battle. We end up in Bikanel, and after getting our party back together, we continue on with the search for Yuna. Bikanel Island is special in that we can steal a lot of useful items from enemies here. Those include more sleeping powders, smoke bombs, and also shadow gems which deal damage from sandworms, which ironically is also the fastest way to beat them at this point. We also go through the Sandragora fights. You could end this one quickly with Petrify grenades as well, but since we only got a few of those left, we use sleeping powders instead since we can get more of them rather easily and then just lancet the enemy down for the win. Pretty much the same goes for home. The majority of enemies can be put to sleep, so it's not really a big issue as well. The only time we throw a Petrify grenade is at the very last fight against the 2 Chimera, since those are immune against sleep and can become a problem over time, so might as well keep it simple if we can. We get access to the airship for the first time and make our way towards Bevelle, where we are stopped by the next boss, Avray. Now, at first I thought this one was gonna be rather easy since we can just fly away with the airship to create some distance. That was until I realized that we're not allowed to use any trigger commands either. Luckily, we can use all kinds of things against the boss here. First of all, we throw a silver hourglass on the boss to put slow on it. Afterwards, we throw haste, protect and shell onto the party, while Titus gives some extra defense with cheer. With all those setups, we get a ton of turns before the enemy can even do anything. Poison Breath at this point is no problem anymore, since the Elbat potion not only heals up the damage, but at the same time also cures the poison. Once you reach a certain HP threshold, the boss will start using haste as well. You can still use slow, but Every will immediately counter it with haste again, so it's no use any longer. The biggest problem in this fight is probably Stone Gaze, which can petrify a character. All bad potions luckily help against petrify, but in this scenario we got unlucky and Rikku was the one that got hit with it towards the end. When the boss also used Poison Breath right after, things got tricky since we got no way to heal the poison any longer. Luckily the boss is almost down at this point, and we are able to squeeze out the last bits of HP with Lancet before poison would wipe the rest of the party, giving us another first try victory. The next few fights against the Bevelle monks aren't worth mentioning since you can put sleep on all of them. We do try to get a rare steel here in order to get a purifying salt which has a dispel effect on it. Other than that, nothing much to mention here. We go through the Temple of Bevelle, which is by far the most annoying one in the entire game, grab Bahamut and then get caught and separated thanks to Keynok. First up is the part with Yuna, and there is not really anything worth mentioning here. At the end of the Via Purifico, there is a battle against Isara where you are forced to use summons. Since Yuna was in the active party quite a bit, this one is not a problem though, and we quickly destroy Isaru's Aeons. The more interesting part is the one underwater with Titus, Rikku and Waka. Here we have to go through Efre Altana, and this is usually one of the easiest bosses in the entire game due to it being undead, so you can easily beat it with 2 Phoenix Downs. Unfortunately, we're not able to use such luxury tools, so we have to find another way. Since we're not allowed to use any trigger commands either, we can also not use the gimmick with the locked door. Because of the boss being undead, Lancet doesn't work either, which I completely forgot until I used it for the first time. Luckily, we can once again slow Every down using a Silver Hourglass, and the first Stone Gaze also doesn't petrify Rikku. The Shadow Gems we got on Beaconell Island surprisingly work here, so we use those to deal big damage to the boss. After using 3 of those, we steal a couple of Water Gems and then finish it off with 2 more Arctic Winds. But of course, we're not done here just yet. The party reunites and fight number 2 against Seymour is now upon us. Once again, we start off the battle using Haste and Shell, and then throw a Poison Fang on Seymour. The continued poison ticks are going to deal quite some damage over the course of the battle. Both Titus and Kimahri are throwing out Lancets again. Desperado is super annoying since it repels all your buffs, so Rikku is usually occupied throwing items on the party for the most part. Eventually, Seymour is going to start using Break. Luckily, he didn't target Rikku at first, so we can easily heal that with an all bad potion. And because I just jinxed it, the second one hits Rikku of course, so now it's basically balls to the wall spamming Lancet, trying to get the victory. The next break hits Titus, so Kimahri is the only one left, and because this run didn't have enough clutch victories yet, Kimahri tanks several flares and is actually able to finish Seymour off by himself. Wasn't expecting a victory after 2/3 of my party got petrified, but hey, I'm not going to complain about that at all. We head into the Calmlands next, where once again there are a couple of very useful steals. This is the first area where we can steal elemental gems, which is the highest tier of elemental items in this game. Former rare steals like Poison Fangs and such also become common steals now, which makes things a little more convenient as well. Still, we train a Chocobo to get access to Requiem Temple and play the Chocobo chest minigame. Opening 4 chests while winning the game awards you with 30 pendulums, which we can use to customize Master Thief onto an armor piece. Master Thief guarantees a rare steal, and while I wish we could have gained access to this one earlier, I'm still rather glad we can get it at all. We continue on with the game and run into the next boss fight against Defender X. This boss fight could be cheesed by using Provoke, but since Titus never really got into his own grid, we unfortunately don't have access to that ability. Nonetheless, the fight isn't that much harder without it either. Again, we haste and protect the entire party, while Titus throws out a couple of cheers for extra defense to make sure every party member can tank an attack of the boss. Afterwards, it's back to using Lancet and throwing items. The only thing to watch out here is that you're not allowed to attack the boss more than 4 times each turn, since he will counter with Sloga otherwise, which I found out the hard way after noticing that stealing apparently counts as an attack as well. Anyways, other than this, the battle itself is very simple, and while it does take quite a while, we were never in any real danger or anything. Eventually the boss goes down, and we're able to continue on. On Gagazet, we have the solo Kimahri battle against Biran and Yankee coming up. This battle is pretty much a joke though, as Kimahri heals more HP using Lancet than what the two of them do damage. Since their stats do scale off Kimahri's stats, the battle does take quite a while and is rather annoying, but that's pretty much it. We also learn a ton of blue magic with Kimahri here, which is useless considering we can't use it anyways, but yeah, after a while both of them are down and we continue on. There are also a ton of bombs spawning on Mount Gagazet, which all give several fire gems as a steal, so this is probably going to be our main weapon going forward due to how easily you can farm them. We also run into wands where we are stacking up holy waters, since 30 of those can be customized into a zombie ward passive. While this doesn't nullify the chance to get zombied in the upcoming boss battle, I thought it is still worth a shot. Before we get there though, we actually go back and enter the Cave of the Stolen Faith, and the main reason for that is the magic pot here. We're looking for a very specific item, which is the stamina tablet that doubles the max HP of the party member it is used on. It is one of 3 possible prizes you can get when you hit a jackpot on the middle eye, with the other 2 being a Phoenix down or an elixir, which both are rather useless. And while we're already here, might as well go all the way and fight Yojimbo. This fight is not anything special though. Yojimbo doesn't deal a lot of damage, so we just haste the entire party and go to work with Lancet and fire gems until the boss is down. While we won't use Yojimbo himself, there's a very useful item in one of the chambers, which is the flexible arm for Rikku, a weapon with 4 open slots. Once we got all the stamina tablets needed, we return to Mount Gagazet for battle number 3 against Seymour. Again, we start off by cheating with Titus and setting up buffs with Rikku. Seymour zombies Titus and he is already gone, so that's a great start. Just like in the previous encounter, Seymour again can be poisoned, so we throw a poison fang and also a silence grenade onto him. Kimahri starts using Lancet while Rikku tries to set the last couple of buffs up, but pretty soon after, Kimahri also gets zombied. At this point, Rikku is our only damage dealer, throwing fire gems at Seymour. We use a stamina tablet to double Rikku's HP and heal to full before going back to damage the boss. Unlike the other 2 party members, Rikku can withstand the first Lance of Atrophy without becoming a zombie, and we do surprisingly good damage with the fire gems. The second Lance of Atrophy does manage to put zombie on her, but at this point we push Seymour far enough for him to go into auto attack mode, where he won't do anything for 2 turns before unleashing his big attack. Since Seymour still had about 40,000 HP left, I took all my money and threw it at him with Rikku's spare change, which would have actually gotten us a victory right there, but I wasn't really willing to sacrifice all my money in a single fight, so we reload the previous save and went as Seymour one more time. This time I made sure to switch out all characters before Lance of Atrophy to make sure none of my main party members would go down. Unfortunately, he followed it up with full life immediately afterwards, so this plan kind of backfired. The second Lance hit Oren, who we can luckily switch out before he goes down as well. Once we got Poison, Silence, as well as our buff set up, we start going to work again using Lancet and fire gems. Again we use the stamina tablets to double our max HP, but unfortunately Rikku gets zombied right afterwards. With her having haste though, we can switch her out before the full life happens and prevent her from going down for at least a little while longer. At this point, we have done enough damage for him to go into auto attack mode, so we don't have to be afraid of a full life any longer. Total Annihilation will definitely wipe Rikku, so we switch her out for Oren, hoping that he might have enough HP to tank the attack. And we got lucky because with 149 HP remaining, Oren is still alive, so we can switch Rikku back in and continue throwing fire gems. Unfortunately, a reflected flare is enough to wipe her right after, but at this point Seymour is pretty much down already, and another Lancet followed by Poison Tick is enough to win the battle on the second attempt. Would have been a first attempt, but I'd rather keep my money, so yeah. I was honestly surprised that this battle went as smooth and quickly as it did. I was expecting this to be one of the worst battles in the entire game, but with a good strategy in place, it is much more manageable than I had first anticipated. With that, we continue on and head towards Samarkand. Gagazet Cave not only offers a couple of minigames that you have to go through, but also quite a few useful encounters that we can steal from. The dark flank gives star curtains, which is basically reflect, and those are going to be very important for a specific fight later. The underwater battles give water gems, which is nice because elemental coverage is definitely always useful. We can also steal dream powders here, which is the upgraded version of the sleep powder. While the effect is the same, dream powders deal a little more damage, so might as well take those going forward. It is actually surprising how many enemies can be put to sleep. This makes fighting them a lot easier since we're getting into the parts of the game where a lot of random encounters can become very nasty. Coming up next is the Spectral Keeper, and this was another boss I was mildly afraid of due to the possible status ailments it can inflict. Again, we start off with a couple of cheers and then throw haste onto everybody. Just like Seymour, Spectral Keeper can also be poisoned, but the falling photon wings inflict several nasty ailments on the party, including sleep and confusion. Luckily, Rikku hits herself and snaps out of confusion, so we can continue throwing items. The enemy likes to heal himself, which is why we throw a star curtain at the boss so the spells bounce back at the party. We also throw a silver hourglass for slow, which is countered by haste, but luckily it bounces back at the party due to the reflect up. As long as he's slowed down, he will counter with haste every time he takes damage, so the boss helps putting haste on the rest of the party. A tail sweep mana breath combination wipes Titus, and shortly afterwards, the enemy puts up a reflect on the party in order to bounce his buffs back towards him. At this point, unfortunately we can't prevent the haste any longer. We throw a smoke bomb to inflict blind to hopefully dodge the tail sweep and continue on. Eventually the boss will heal himself with Izuna, but we can just throw another smoke bomb and poison fang at him. The next photon wings put Rikku to sleep, but luckily the poison tick is enough to deplete the last bits of HP, and we win the battle on the very first try yet again. A little messy, but I'll take the victory. With that, we're now on our way to Samarkand. The enemies on the road are the same for the most part as in Gagazet Cave. Once we reach the temple, however, we got a few new ones to choose from. We can steal purifying salts from the undead Bevelle monks. Like mentioned earlier, those come with a dispel effect, so they are pretty useful. Other than that, it's the same as always, and we continue on beating the Cloister of Trials before running into the next boss, Spectral Keeper, and this one is a problem. Since we're not allowed to use trigger commands, the party can warp around the field, which makes this battle a lot more difficult. Spectral Keeper will counter every attack with an AoE physical attack, and on its turns, we'll try to berserk a character using Berserker Tail. Again, we use cheer to up our defense and start throwing chocobo feathers and light curtains for protect. The boss hitting Rikku with Berserk Tail is the ideal scenario since she is one of the few party members that has an armor piece with Berserk Ward on it. Once we got all our buffs up, we start going to work by once again throwing gems at the boss with Rikku and using Lancet with the guys. The biggest problem here is that even with Protect and Cheer up, the constant counterattacks pile up on damage, so Rikku often has to heal with an Albat potion instead of doing damage. Eventually, he will also start using Glyph Mine, and at this point the battle becomes a roulette. If you get unlucky, your party members will be wiped, and there is nothing you can do about it. The first time Kimahri got hit with it, but as long as Rikku is alive, we still got a chance. After a few more turns, Titus got berserked, which sucks because that means he will be down soon as well. On the other hand, it's actually an advantage for Rikku since she's now out of range for the counterattacks, meaning she can deal good damage without having to heal every other turn. The following turn though, we get the next Glyph Mine, and this time unfortunately it's also on Rikku's spot, so once the mine goes off, it's game over. Now the Glyph Mine is RNG, so we can't really do anything about that. However, if we are able to increase our DPS, there will be less chances for the Glyph Mine to target Rikku. Since she had to heal quite a lot throughout this fight, I had another idea in mind that might work much better than my first attempt. For attempt number 2, we switch out Kimahri for Lulu. Lulu can use Reflex, which increases the evasion of the entire party. While the counterattack hits pretty hard, It's not a guaranteed hit and can be dodged, so the idea here was that with more regular dodging, Rikku doesn't need to heal that often and can deal more damage in the process. So once again, we set up haste and protect on the entire party and then start going to work on the boss. And while Titus still gets hit rather regularly, Rikku does indeed start to dodge roughly every other counter. It also helps that Titus is the first one to get berserked, so just like before, Rikku is out of range for a counterattack. We get very lucky with the first Glyph Mine as neither Rikku nor Lulu are targeted by it. Rikku does get hit by the counter occasionally, so an L-Bad potion is still needed every now and then, but we're doing damage way faster compared to the previous attempt. The next Glyph Mine unfortunately will wipe Lulu, but at this point the evasion boost is pretty much maxed out anyways, so it's not really that important. Luckily, this isn't even an issue though, as we're able to beat the boss before the mine even goes off, so there you go, good fight. This wasn't even the biggest problem here, because we are about to fight Yunalesca next, and this is something I am really not looking forward to.
Now! This is it! Now is the time to choose. Die and be free of pain, or live and fight your sorrow. Now is the time to shape your stories. Your fate is in your hands!
Also, this is probably my favorite set of lines in the entire Final Fantasy franchise. I love Auron, but it's a shame he hasn't had any real use in this run so far. Anyways, Yunalesca comes in 3 phases. Phase 1 is by far the easiest, as she will only do single target attacks that dispel the target, or use Absorb to regain some HP. Once again, we set up Haste, Shell and Protect, and this time also Reflect. Yunalesca likes to counter every special attack by using Sleep, so you definitely want to prevent that from happening. Other than that, the first phase of the fight is rather simple, and nothing too big. Phase 2 opens up with Hellbiter, and here comes the big problem. Hellbiter puts zombie on the entire party. Now, we could prevent that with a zombie wall, but the problem is that once she switches into phase 3, she will insta-kill every party member that is not inflicted with zombie. And since we have no means to cure zombie, this means once we reach phase 2, we have to power through the rest of the fight without any healing. With zombie on, Lancet also becomes useless, so at this point Rikku is literally the only character that can still damage the boss. And if this wasn't bad enough already, in phase 2 she likes to counter attacks with her Dispel attack. Without haste, Rikku gets way less attacks, and without any means to heal, this becomes a problem quickly. Luckily, during my first attempt, I already accidentally discovered the solution for that, and it involves a character we haven't used at all in this challenge run so far. Auron can use Guard, where he will block single target physical attacks directed towards another party member. Well, it turns out that the counter just so happens to perfectly fit the criteria for Guard. This not only means that Rikku is taking less damage, but also that she keeps her haste without having to reapply it every other turn. With that, we make it all the way into the last phase, and we probably could have even squeezed out a victory here, but there is one more issue. In phase 3, Yunalesca also gains access to Mind Blast, which has a high chance to confuse a character, and if that confusion hits Rikku, it's pretty much over. Auron is also down at this point, so we can't prevent the Dispel counter from happening any longer either. Even though the party members eventually kick out of confusion after hitting themselves, the damage done and the turns wasted add up, and eventually Rikku goes down, therefore ending attempt number 1. With that knowledge though, I am pretty sure attempt number 2 will be much better. Before we do that though, we get some more stamina tablets for double max HP, and also steal a couple of musks from the Ahriman to customize Confuse Proof onto Rikku's armor. On our second attempt against Yunalesca, we once again set up everything in phase 1 since she barely does any damage here yet. This time we also use stamina tablets on both Rikku and Auron to double their max HP, and then heal up to full before switching Auron back out again. The rest of phase 1 is like before, Lancet with Titus and Kimahri, and throw items with Rikku. Once she transitions into phase 2, we bring back Auron for Kimahri. Thanks to the item grind, Auron has also learned Sentinel at this point, which is the upgraded version of Guard that also includes a Defend. With that, Orin is barely taking any damage on the counters, while Rikku stays at high HP during all times, as well as her haste staying intact. Yunalesca will occasionally use regen, which reflects back right at her. In this case, we use the purifying salts we stole from the guards outside of Sanarkand to dispel the regen, and make sure she doesn't regenerate too much HP. Once we hit phase 3, both Rikku and Orin barely have lost any HP, and with Rikku now also being immune to Confuse, I really don't see any way we can still lose this fight. We also bring in Lulu for focus, so the magic attacks deal even less damage, though at this point it's probably not even necessary. The battle does take quite a while, but at this point the strategy is solid and safe, and eventually we win the fight and beat Yunalesca as well. I gotta admit, the feeling of steamrolling a boss with a solid strategy, even through dumb restrictions, is pretty awesome. Since we now got the airship, we can access several new areas. We pick up several new pieces of equipment, including the Victorious for Rikku, which makes her immune to fire, ice and lightning magic, and the Phantom Bangle for Lulu, which lets her absorb fire, ice and water magic. We also unlock the Omega Ruins, which have a lot of useful items from Steel, so we will definitely come back here later. Before that, we battle Sin though. We start off with the two Finns, and this is relatively simple. Due to the party starting off in the distance, Lancet is the only damaging move we can do, so once we got the party buffed, we go to work and heal with Rikku occasionally if needed. Both Finns have around 65,000 HP, and considering we only do about 700 damage with Lancet, the two battles take forever. Luckily the Finns only use one attack, which doesn't do too much damage, so healing up isn't really a big problem. Once we're done with both Finns, we fight the core, which also comes alongside Sinspawn Chennai, I think it's called. Let's just call it Sinspawn. Rikku can't hit the core until the Sinspawn is down, so she throws fire gems at it, while Kimahri and Titus lands at the core. The Sinspawn can poison characters, which is not a huge deal thanks to the Albad potions, while the core likes to counter attacks with AoE magical attacks, but those don't deal that much damage either. Once the Sinspawn is down, we focus on the core with the entire party, and from there on, it's not really a big issue any longer. The core can use Gravia occasionally, which does big damage, but since it's percentage based, it can't kill any party member. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to that fight. We continue lanceting and throwing gems until the core is down as well, and only Big Sin itself is remaining. Before we battle Sin though, we make a little detour to the Omega Ruins. The Sin battle is unique in the sense that we only got a certain amount of turns to win before we get wiped. With Rikku being the biggest damage dealer and Sin having 120,000 HP, I doubt the gems will do enough damage in time to win the battle. Because of this, we go to the Omega Ruins where we can steal Shining Gems, which is basically Flare, and those do like 1 point times 5 the damage of gems if they are hitting for neutral damage. Other than that, there are many other useful items we can steal here. We can get healing waters from the Adamant Toys, which is a full party heal, and Petrify Grenades from the Saurus. The Black Elementals are the best source to steal Shining Gems, since you usually get 4 of them per successful steal. Unfortunately, it's the rare steal, and I forgot to equip my Master Thief armor in the very first encounter, so yeah, good job. Vargas is the second enemy that has Shining Gems as a steal, though you usually only get 1 of them each time. We also steal Stamina Tonics from Makia, which is basically the party-wide version of the Stamina Tablet from earlier, which doubles the party's max HP. Another thing to mention here is that a lot of encounters can be insta-killed using Petrify Grenades, so while we are mostly here for item grinding, it's also a good opportunity to gain some experience while we're at it. Once we have completed the item grind, we return to the airship and battle Sin itself now. The first 2 turns, Sin is too far away to be attacked with items, which is the perfect opportunity to set up buffs with Rikku, while Titus and Kimahri start lanceting the enemy. After 2 turns, Sin is in range, so we now start throwing our newly acquired Shining Gems, which do roughly 6,000 damage every time they're used. The Lancet damage is minuscule compared to that, but every bit of damage counts in a battle like this. Sin also likes to inflict ailments with its attacks, including Confusion, but luckily Rikku is immune to that, so she can continue spamming gems. Titus gets petrified halfway through the battle as well, but as long as Rikku is alive and well, we should be safe. A few turns later, Rikku is almost down, but at this point Sin is pretty much out of HP, and after a few more shining gems, Sin is down, leaving us with only 2 more bosses left in this challenge run. The first one is Seymour Omnis, which many call the easiest Seymour fight in the entire game, and even in this challenge it probably is not going to be a big problem, but hey, at least the battle theme is a banger. Our setup for this is Rikku, who obviously applies buffs and does damage, Rikku for some extra lancet damage, and Lulu, who increases the party's magic defense with focus. Lulu and Rikku not taking any damage from 3 out of 4 elements due to their armor is certainly a big advantage as well. With his wheels thingy, he's also always weak to certain elements, so we can save our shining gems and work with the elemental ones since they almost do the same amount of damage if they hit a weakness. Once his wheels light up, he will dispel the entire party and follow up with Ultima afterwards. Since we don't have enough turns to put up all buffs again, I just went with haste and hoped for the best. Also, I am pretty sure that Seymour's Ultima is classified as some kind of special attack, therefore I am not sure Shell would even do anything to reduce the damage. Thanks to the healing waters we stole earlier, healing up is no issue at all, and we continue on doing damage. And yeah, that is pretty much all there is to that fight. We eat another Ultima, heal up afterwards, and continue throwing items until Seymour is finally down for good. With that, we are basically standing in front of the final boss now. Before we head into the last battle though, we make some more customizations onto our armor. Jack likes to inflict both Petrify and Zombie, so we use the Petrify grenades and the Candle of Lives we stole in the Omega Ruins to customize Stoneproof and Zombie-proof on the main party. With that, it's time to head into the final boss fight against Shaxx, aka Braska's final Aeon. One of the first big problems here is the starting setup, which is always Titus, Yuna and Oren. I completely forgot about that, and unlike the main party, they are not immune to Petrify. Luckily, neither of them got inflicted with any statuses, so we can switch our main party back in and start going. Once again we set up haste, shell and protect on the entire party. Since Jack doesn't have any dispelling moves, we don't even have to worry about reapplying those either. We also throw a stamina tonic we got earlier in order to double everybody's max HP as well. Phase 1 of the fight is rather tame. Pretty much all of his attacks don't really do a lot of damage and can easily be healed up. Even his overdrive attack isn't really a big problem during this phase yet. Once we got everything set up, we continue throwing shining gems while also damaging the boss with Lancet. The U pagodas are annoying, but at this point we will still ignore them. When Jack switches into phase 2, things become slightly more dangerous. His overdrive attack now does way more damage and would have definitely wiped a party member had we not doubled the party's max HP. Since we're also starting to run a little low on shining gems, we also throw a couple of AoE damaging items in order to stop the U pagodas from constantly healing Jack. Other than that, it's the same as in phase 1. Throw items, Lancet, and heal occasionally when needed with healing waters. When Jack gets low on HP, he gets access to an even stronger overdrive, which is the ultimate Jack shot that hits the entire party for about 4,500 damage. Thanks to the help of healing waters though, again this is not a big issue, and we continue doing damage until Jack is down, the battle is won, and this challenge is pretty much completed. We still have a couple of battles coming up against the Aeons and Yu Yevon, but at this point the entire party has permanent auto life, so we can't really lose here any longer. The Aeon battles are rather simple as well. We use Lancet and lower tier items to get through them for the most part. Now, while we got those battles running in the background, there is still something I want to talk about. A few of you may have noticed a very specific ability that has popped up late into this run but never found any use, and I'm talking about Lulu's Double Cast. Double Cast itself is a special ability and therefore falls within the rules of this run, but since it does use abilities that are either black or white magic, it is kind of a gray zone. I did learn the ability as an emergency means in case we permanently get stuck somewhere without any way to advance, which, to be honest, was mostly for the Sin battle due to the limited amount of turns, but luckily, we never had to use it at all. Anyways, we're now up against the very last battle of this run against Yu Yevon. And everybody who played this game before knows that there are tons of ways to beat Yu Yevon, the easiest being to put zombie on it. Unfortunately, that is not possible for our setup, so we just throw a star curtain on it to reflect the auto healing back, and then start going to work with items and Lancet, and that is pretty much all there is to that fight. The reflect has to be renewed every time the pagodas heal Yu Yevon, since it also gets rid of the reflect, but otherwise there isn't really too much to pay attention to here. While the battle does take quite a while due to him having 100,000 HP and me running out of shining gems towards the end, it's not really a big problem, and eventually you'll throw the last item, win the fight, and complete this challenge for good. This was a really interesting challenge run for me personally. Even though we only had very limited options with using special abilities exclusively, literally every character was useful in some situation. Even Walker, whose sole purpose in this run was defending and tanking damage in the underwater fights, was useful to some extent, with the obvious MVP of the challenge being Rikku. So yeah, that is it for this challenge run. I will probably do another Final Fantasy challenge in the next couple of months, so stay tuned for that one as well. Also, special shoutouts as always go to this video's Patreon Nerverel. If you want to join the Patreon as well, the link is below in the video description. Becoming a Patreon gives you 48-hour early access to new challenge runs, among other things. But enough of the plugs for now. Thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed the run, and I hope to see all of you here next time again. Until then, take care.